So the Independent Electoral Commission conducted the first voter registration drive this weekend, and later in the day today, the IEC will be briefing in relation to how the weekend fared. Having crisscrossed the country, Newzroom Afrika spoke to a number of South Africans this weekend who opened up about their lived realities. From a lack of basic human rights such as water to youth unemployment, some have questioned the notion of democracy. We take a look at this with political analyst Sandile Swana. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon. Perhaps let's revisit this moment. Our reporter Nasi Pisame was in the Western Cape and she spoke to a number of people, but one of them, this is what the gentleman had to tell her about their lived reality.
I don't feel encouraged to vote, as I religiously voted for the ANC, and they has miserably disappointed me. I've changed to vote for a local guy from the DA, because I saw him coming from the ground, saw him doing his work now, and he has also now done exactly the same that the party that I used to choose done. He has also abandoned us. He has changed his morals and objectives, and he's abandoned us to fight still our battle here with immense poverty and lots of challenges, and the lives is not improving of the young or the old.
Sandile Swana, the tagline of the IEC, more so after every briefing, is "This is your democracy. Own it." How would you characterize South Africa's democratic project over the past 29 years as we fetch 30 next year?
Yes, thank you so much, Dudu, and your listeners. We have difficulties here. Just as your listener has pointed out, that the ruling class, the political elites working together with the economic elites, have isolated the masses from the benefits of the state, from shared development. How that has been achieved has got various elements. One of them is that if you look at the 35 million people who could have voted in the 2019 election, only 17 million voted. By the time of the local government election, 45% of the registered voters voted for the government, which means actually you are starting to have the situation of apartheid in South Africa, where a minority of the local population votes and makes government without the majority. So you have a problem of legitimacy of the ruling elites who are ruling for themselves. And then that has created economic apartheid. We have a right to vote politically, but as that vote is being exercised and being monopolized by political parties, the economic apartheid works its way into the system, and the vast majority of South Africans, and there are millions, tens of millions, are now excluded. So there is no economic democracy in South Africa today, and the ruling elites are in fact illegitimate as things stand now.
Sandile Swana, sir, is there no good story to tell? And before you answer that, let's take a listen at a gentleman that Newzroom Afrika's Ziniko Mhlaba spoke to over the weekend. And here's his views that maybe things aren't working, but hey, I'll stick to the same party. Let's take a listen at this.
Ideally, in that we've been seeing a lot of municipalities being in coalitions. Do you think maybe South Africa is ready for that from your understanding as you've been voting over the years? What kind of governance would you like to see after the elections next year?
No, now we'll stay on my party, ANC. I'm not going to go with coalitions. ANC is our ruling party. We won't change for it.
But it's not been working for you, and it?
Yes, it doesn't work for us, but I won't change for it. ANC is Kupe again. It never changed for ANC. I will stay there, but they must try to work for the people, because we put in there.
That you have a South African that says, yes, it has been bad, but I'll stick to what has not been working for me. Has it been all that bad? Is there no good story to tell when we speak of this democracy of South Africa?
When there is a good story to tell, it must come from good and credible institutions. Those institutions could be institutions such as Stats SA, institutions such as the Auditor General, institutions such as the Society for Civil Engineers and so on, who measure things objectively on the ground. Now, when you take reports from Stats SA and related institutions, you will discover, for instance, that our youth are being ravaged by drugs. Pregnant mothers are being ravaged by alcohol together with their children. Unemployment has increased and is out of control. Poverty is out of control. Inequality is out of control. South Africa is now number 7 in the world out of 197 United Nations listed. It is in the top 7 of gangster states in terms of organized crime, where the intentions of the state and the intentions of the mafia are the same. So we cannot take reports from somebody in the street who studies nothing, who measures nothing, who just goes on a gut feel and say the state is good, South Africa is good because of that person who is presenting an unscientific view. We cannot do that, not at all.
No, Mr. Swana, sir, I think we misunderstood that, because that gentleman, in his defense, he was actually saying that things, yes, are not working, but I will stick to this party for whatever reason, and perhaps we should not be slating his views or his feelings. It's the lived realities of South Africans, and this is what they have shared with us. But I'd like to take a listen at this, because Newzroom Afrika's Zikwana Chona was in Limpopo over this voter registration weekend, and she spoke to a young woman who is unemployed. This is what she shared about her journey.
It's something painful. As a young woman, without income, how can I live without a job, barely? Because I've graduated. I'm surviving because I'm staying with my husband. He's providing there and there. I come to a point where I see their support, like I don't need this support. I need a job.
Matebula says she has already made up her mind about the upcoming election.
I won't vote. How can I vote when I see other graduates moving around the streets?
Sandile Swana, sir, how should we understand the views that have been expressed by some South Africans, albeit 3, for the purpose of this conversation, with the political speak that 2024 will become another 1994? Is that something that we are really likely to see? What makes the two different?
2024 is the year where in South Africa the ruling post-colonial elites or the ruling post-apartheid elites should be overthrown from power and removed from power. Because what has happened, Thabo Mbeki put it in quoting a poem by Colwell, that we need to be careful, the revolutionaries need to be careful that the country after independence is not taken over by Imigodoi. But what has happened since the Bulukwane conference, parasites and carnivores and cannibals, what you call the predator elites, have taken the nation of South Africa and are consuming it. And that is what needs to be overthrown in 2024 and is likely to be overthrown in 2024. In 1994, what needed to be overthrown and was overthrown was the white minority regime, which was also a predator state that was predating on the black majority, which they classified as Africans, Coloreds, and Indians for the purposes of exploitation. So it was white exploitation of the darker complexions. Now the complexion is a mafia of international business, big business, with the ANC consuming the local population, and that is what needs to be overthrown in 2024.
Mr. Swana, sir, I think the very first gentleman that we heard from that was speaking to my colleague Nasipi Same in the Western Cape noted that the party that I always voted for, and I've always voted for, I moved from that party to an independent candidate whom I saw coming from a different party, namely the DA. But he too seems to have abandoned us. He too seems to have put himself first. And so what does that tell you when it comes to most people or some South Africans who are questioning themselves that when you say democracy is yours, own it, where do we go in terms of not just an alternative, but if you are also betrayed by independents whom you had thought were going to at least introduce some change?
I think that we need to look at three major intellectuals in order to answer your question. The first one is Frantz Fanon, who said every revolution is first and foremost a cultural revolution, which means the culture of serving the interest of the person, the individual, needs to be overthrown so that the people who become public servants are the ones who are there for public service, servant leadership. The other one is Stephen Biko, who was focused on changing the psychology of the population, whether black or white in South Africa. And the third one was Nelson Mandela, who said we need an RDP of the soul because our souls have been ravaged and we are now permeated by corruption in every sphere. So our souls needed to be redeveloped from 1994. And unfortunately, the leaders of the time, the ANC, Thabo Mbeki, Cyril Ramaphosa and others, never paid any attention to the RDP of the soul. And the RDP of the soul is what is going to take us out of this mess, where the person who stands up, regardless of political party, has actually morality, moral clarity, political clarity, and a commitment to a patriotic vision and a pan-Africanist vision of Africa that we must all prosper as Africans in Africa.
Servant leadership. Thank you very much, sir, for your contribution this afternoon. Sandile Swana is a political analyst.